Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Optimizing Your Success. We are brought to you by the Mentor Project. I am your host for tonight, Dr. Ruth Gotian, and I celebrate high achievers and I study them to figure out what has made them so successful so you can be successful too. We have our usual panel of amazing high achievers here today, including Susie Katz, an award-winning photographer and founder of Photo Wings, which helps people think creatively through photography. And Devin Harris, say hi, Devin, three-time Olympian and original member of the Jamaican bobsledding team who was featured in the movie Cool Runnings. And of course, Janice Lintz, the #1 change maker with the special passion to help the millions of people worldwide with hearing loss. And Dr. Bruce Y. Lee, a writer, a journalist, a professor, a systems modeler, computational and digital health expert. And our very special guest for today, Lisa McLeod, the author of Selling with Noble Purpose. She is going to teach us this skill. And let me tell you, she has been coaching me. I know Lisa through the Marshall Goldsmith 100 coaches, and she has been helping me out tremendously over the last few months. And she has agreed to share her brilliance with all of us. Lisa, welcome. Welcome to Optimizing Your Success.
Thanks. It's such a pleasure to be with you all. What a group here of great leaders.
What a group. What a group. So Lisa, tell us your story. Tell us how you got from, take us way back to how you even got interested in sales and how you became this best-selling author and coach to some of the most brilliant people in the world.
So I had a moment, and I don't usually tell this story. I had a moment when I was...
I'm good at getting it out of people.
You are, just like that. I was 14 years old, and I was working at the Donut King in Arlington, Virginia. And that was before there were so many chain places. And our owner was a first generation immigrant, and I'm just working at the Donut King. I'm making like, $1.50 an hour or whatever you make then. And I remember one day this guy came in who was a fireman. And he said, "How many donuts do you have?" And I counted him up. He goes, "I'll take all the donuts you have. And do you have any more in the back?" So I run in the back and I get more donuts. And he buys us out. And this is back when everybody didn't pay with debit. They paid with cash. And so about an hour later, the owner comes back in. And I'm like 14 years old. And he's left me alone in this donut shop. And so that was a big leap of faith. But about an hour later, he comes back in and he opens the cash register. And I just remember the look on his face. There's like a $50 bill in there. And at that moment, I don't know that it totally clicked for me. But at that moment, I didn't know that I was going to be in sales, but something in me clicked. And there's something here. Because I watched the firemen leave all happy. I watched my boss thrilled. He gave me like $2 out of the cash register. And I was like, I think there's something here for me.
Wow. So you went from 14-year-old selling donuts to not just being a world expert in sales, but doing sales with heart, with what you call noble purpose. Tell us that story.
So I went on to have a career in sales. I was a Procter & Gamble sales trainer, but the whole time that I was training people in sales, a lot of times we have this perception of sales as this kind of icky thing that Janice says you sold donuts. Yes. Donuts are actually not that hard to sell. Let's be honest here.
I just want to know if you have to really be up at 5 a.m. to make donuts.
I didn't make
time to make the donuts.
I sold the donuts. It is interesting that I want to say something about that ad, time to make the donuts, because that is how everybody has felt about work lately. Time to make the donuts. Here I go.
That's right.
So how I ended up on this topic of purpose is I was a longtime sales expert, sales trainer, but I always knew that underneath all these sales skills, there was something sitting under that. I just sort of instinctively felt it. I felt it in myself. I could see it in the top performers. And about 10 years back, I did a study for a major sales organization to identify what differentiated the top performers. It was a big biotech company. And I had a conversation with one sales rep in Phoenix, Arizona, where she talked about her heart. And most salespeople in that business do not talk about that. And she said, my grandmother had this disease that was what treated the drugs she sold. She had a grandmother, and she told me this really compelling emotional story. And I knew at that moment, this is the thing we've all been missing. And so I spent a decade studying this. And what we have determined, beyond the shadow of a doubt, organizations with a purpose bigger than money, who truly want to make a difference to their customers, outperform organizations who are focused on internal metrics. And the other thing that we've seen is when it comes to salespeople, the salespeople who have this noble purpose outsell salespeople focused on their targets and quotas. And so I work with sales leaders all over the world because most organizations do make a difference. It might not be curing cancer, but even if they're just making your IT system work better or making your accounting system easier to understand, most organizations do make a difference or they wouldn't be in business. But what happens is the organizational conversation becomes all about the internal targets and quotas. And, Ruth, when you say you and I have worked together, your work is so meaningful to people and so important. And I look at what everyone does here, but I'm going to ask show of hands. How many of you, if someone came up to you and said, I want to help you sell yourself better, how many of you would have some hesitancy about, oh God, what's that about? Show of hands. Doctor,
all of us.
Right.
All of us do. And it's because we have let the people who are actually bad at sales. The data tells us those self-serving, grabby, I'm all in it for myself people actually are the worst salespeople ever. They do not get good results, but yet we let them define the profession. And we think it's not noble to promote ourselves. When in reality, if you have something valuable, if you have something that you honestly feel like I'm sure all of you do, that people could benefit from, languaging it in a way that makes people excited about it and makes them want to help you, that's not just good for you, that's good for them if what you're selling is really helpful.
And you talk about this study that you did, and you talk about that conversation in Arizona. You talk about that in your book, Selling with Noble Purpose. And you actually practice what you preach as well, because you really help people just develop that language for branding who it is that they are, the problem that they solve, and what it is that they're doing. And what happens is, because I know you and I have been working together, sometimes we're so deep in our own work that we don't understand how it translates to other people. And we don't always know how to have those conversations with other people where we tell them what we want to do or what we're doing or the problem that we're solving. And very often we're talking to people who are different than us.
Right.
So they don't even speak our language.
Right. One of the most powerful projects I did was training a group of scientists and doctors how to talk about their research in a way. Because they're all deep into it and they start with, I want to tell you about the data on blah, blah, blah. And, well-intended people will kind of listen. But, and I'll give you an example. One was for this organization that had an arthritis drug. And their drug actually got they could give the patient 15% more mobility in their hands. So they go through all this data, and I start talking to them. I said, well, what does 15% mobility mean? Like, what are you able to do differently? And they said, that can be the difference between being able to hold your fork at the table and feed yourself and having someone else feed you. And I was like,
I got chills.
That's what you need to talk about right now. Because the numbers aren't going to move hearts and minds.
Bruce, I need you to weigh in here as a scientist.
Yeah, I think this is one of the, I think you hit the nail on the head, or the cranberry on the sauce, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, today is National Cranberry Relish Day, just to let you know.
I don't even know what cranberry relish is, but okay.
I didn't give you a card. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I think one of the challenges right now is every everything is so siloed and so narrowed that you can forget what you're actually working for.
Right.
And one of the problems, like people talk about translation, like how do you translate what you're doing from a day-to-day standpoint to society, to broader humanity? And with everyone so like pigeonholed in different things, it's hard to see beyond that. So you're absolutely right.
We live in our spreadsheets, huh, Bruce?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the challenges right now, everyone's like focused on meeting these particular metrics, like, you know,
Right,
meet
yeah.
this metric, meet this metric. But why are you doing all this?
And it's the story. Left to their own devices, well-intended people will try to hit the metric that has been put in front of them. And what happens when we do that, even though we are very well-intended, we strip out the meaning and purpose, which would actually animate the project, get other people excited, and get us out of bed on a day when it's hard. I want to hear from some of the rest of the folks how this is landing with you.
So,
Devin.
So Lisa, I'm so digging this because I actually speak about purpose all the time. The fact that, you know, when we connect with our purpose, then it allows us it energizes us and gets us to really focus on our work. And the challenge for all of us is, you know, as we're doing dare I say, these mundane things. So I use bobsledding as an example, and you know how we push sleds to win races, and we spend hours polishing the runners before a race. But what I've come to conclude, certainly with our team, that our purpose is beyond that. It's not just about trying to win a race. It's inspiring people to believe big and to dream big, regardless of how difficult those situations are.
In a speed suit.
Huh?
In a speed suit.
In a speed suit, absolutely. Not a leotard.
Unitard.
But unity, exactly. But you know, do you have and I haven't read your book yet. I'm definitely have to. But do you have any like tips as to how do we get past seeing the mundane and seeing the importance in the mundane and how that impacts and make a difference in the world?
Well, you've said something really important, because the key human challenge is to add meaning to the mundane. Because whether you're hauling out your bobsled, whether you're parenting, whether you're teaching, whatever you're doing, there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't seem that exciting on the surface. And we all know that when we do those things well, they do add up to something. So there's 3 questions you can ask yourself to create, to solidify this sense of purpose. How do you make a difference? And don't just do like the basics. Like, you know, we sell these arthritis drugs. They're really helpful to people. No, like I help somebody maintain the dignity of getting their fork to their mouth at the table with their family. Like that's the kind of visceral imagery that you want.
I love how this just comes so naturally to you. I'm taking notes, by the way. It's just, this language just comes so naturally. You asked a question of, how do you make a difference? And I'm, you know, trying to think of a good answer, and you've already, it just flows out of your mouth.
Well, we talked about your work. So we'll use the one I'm most familiar with here. We talked about your work. And when you start to say, you know, you've codified success, you help successful people get more successful. Like that all sounds like, okay, that sounds nice. But you think about, what does it mean to a person's life to get 15 or 20% better at the thing they care most about? Like, what does that do to their life? What does that do to their family? What does it do to them if they can not waste years and years of not understanding? I mean, like that kind of personal understanding of how your work affects people. I think of photography, and you think about like opening the world to people. We're going to talk about what kind of photographs you take. So the questions are, how do you make a difference, and how do you do it differently? You as a unique human being. Maybe you care more. Maybe you love deeper. Maybe you're more accurate. How do you do it differently? And on your best day, what do you love about your job? On your best day. And I bet you on your best day is when you're part of something bigger than yourself.
You're speaking at the essence of my educational nonprofit Photo Wings, I started it because there was all kinds of aspects of the photography world that I didn't understand. I didn't understand how work got on the cover of a magazine or how photographs got on the wall of a museum. And the essence of it is that you get out of your silo and you work cross-disciplinary, cross-culturally, and cross-generationally to help build up your skills and other people's skills in terms of social emotional learning and executive function skills, because everything that goes into making the photograph that might be on the cover of National Geographic or the New York Times are all those same skills. It's listening, taking a complex situation and synthesize it into story, being able to tell people things from different perspectives. And that's all the same as what you're saying.
Right. So I want to take you and let's jump into this. And let's talk about this how do you make a difference? So let's take this as a case study. When you are on your best day, when your nonprofit is doing that well, what impact does it have on people?
In our case, it can save lives. The kind of work that we do, we work with a lot of conflict photographers, and we help teach emerging photographers how to tell their own stories. So if we can teach them how to stay alive while they're doing that work, how to find the right person that is the best person to tell that story, and how to do that, how to speak in a language that other people will understand. Something that might go on the wall of a museum is not going to be the same one that will help K through 12 understand about the biggest problems in the world. And a lot of cases, it's just focusing on one person. It can be one person. It can be one bigger idea. We have a video on our Photo Wings website called Visual Storytelling that tells about the different ways that you can do that. But I would imagine the same idea applies to what you're saying.
Yeah, and what I want to draw people's attention to, and I'm seeing some comments in the chat, you're getting a little bit of a squeak there, Susie. What I want to draw people's attention to, and what Susie just said is, and even you, Susie, I want you to compare and contrast two things. The difference between saying we train photographers and we help them with the visual learning and all this versus saying we help create people who take the photos that save lives, that change lives. Like we've all thought of those iconic photos that we've seen, the little girl in Vietnam that was burned, like photos that just, some of the civil rights photos, the current video imagery we're seeing now on cell phones. But like we've all had imagery where we just went, oh my gosh, breathtaking moments of beauty that we've seen that inspired us to go see the rest of the world. Like when you talk about what you do in that kind of language, people go, oh, that applies to me. That's what I want that. It's stunning. And we haven't heard from Janice. I'm curious what your take is on all this.
Lisa, I am dying. Literally, I cannot wait for you to do your magic with Janice and her work because, oh, Janice, I hope you're taking notes.
I am absolutely. I have notes right here. That's my entire work is how to make this personal. So when I'm working to advocate change, people have this sad, pathetic image of people with disabilities. And so what I have to do is overcome that hurdle and make it really personal to them. So when I used to advocate for captioning standards, one of the things that I used to do is I would take this one example of when it was on the Trump's Apprentice, the region of Bordeaux, France, was spelled like two animals, boar and a doe. And I would discuss, right? Can you imagine? You can't even imagine. And so, and this is, pre-presidential Trump. So I used to explain how this was impacting my daughter's spelling. And how was my daughter going to learn spelling if captions weren't spelled correctly? And I made it very personal. And so that's how we were able to get people to buy in, because how could you not care about a child with hearing loss not spelling correctly? And then when I went to Bob Bright, the former chairman of NBC, he got it because he had a grandson with autism. So he was able to understand the impact on the child. And so I'm always making it about the impact on children.
Right. And what you said there was really interesting, which is a lesson for everyone. What you talked about had 3 things in it that are the key to getting people to take action. It was about impact. It wasn't just about we do this. It was about the impact. It also had specificity, because both times you talked about a child, not children in general. You talked about a child. And if you think about like those Save the Children ads that they do, they know what they're doing. They tell you about the millions and millions of children, but do they show you a picture of a million children? Oh, heck no. They show you one, and you're going to look right in her eyes, and you're going to have to, I got to open my wallet right now. And I see that. So you talked about, you had impact, you had specificity, direct impact on an individual person, and it had emotion. And, we've talked about, these compelling things, medicine, services for, hearing impaired people, the thrill of bobsledding, the glory of photography. But I will also tell you, this works if you're an accounting firm. Because we had one accounting firm that we worked with. And when you go sell accounting services, you're talking about, well, we have more expertise. Well, we bill cheaper. Our accountants are smarter. Or we'll save you money on tax, blah, 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 blah. And this accounting firm really realized that what they were doing was helping people sleep at night so they could focus on what matters most to them. And when you change that and you say, who wants to lie awake at night worrying about whether you've done your payroll right? Nobody wants to do that. Who wants to lie awake at night worrying that you're going to owe a bunch of money to the IRS at the end of the quarter? Who wants to lie awake at night worrying you're dealing with regulations? Nobody wants to do that. You want to be out bobsledding and photographing and doctoring and changing the world. And so we make sure you can do that. I mean, that is the way, so you don't have to have some big sexy thing like everybody on this call does.
Is that why Coca-Cola sells happiness?
Yes, that is why Coca-Cola sells happiness.
And you don't see their brand, their logo until the very last second.
Yeah. And the thing is, you can use these powers for good or evil. That's why, cigarette companies sold, the bar, man, you're going to be all tough. And so the reason I say this, though, is what often happens, and I'm from Atlanta, and Coca-Cola is a very fine and lovely company, and they do a great job. So I didn't mean to, stop them. But the thing is, a lot of people equate selling with being manipulative, with getting people to do something that they don't want to do. But I got to tell you, people are smart. I don't meet many salespeople that are so crafty. They get people to do something that they don't want to do. And so that notion that we have is kind of ego-based, because it's like, really, you're going to get so good. You're going to make someone do something that they don't even want to do. But there's somehow the feeling, especially amongst artists and intellectuals, that having to sell yourself cheapens your work.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
I think that is because we have been sold to badly. I think that it is because we are so emotionally invested in what we're doing. And a lot of times, if you're an artist or an intellectual, it's not just something you do, it's who you are. It is the essence of everything that you're about. And so what happens is we don't want to have to go sell it because we feel like people should see it anyway.
You should know. You should recognize it when you see it.
You should know. And the reality is people are busy and they don't.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. So someone is always selling, someone is always buying.
Yeah.
So when you turn up at a job interview, you are in fact selling yourself. How does prospective employees, I guess, put their best foot forward, be authentic, and sell themselves in a purposeful way?
So I want to tell you 2 things about that. One, if you're the prospective employee, you are selling. But the tables have turned. And if you're the employer, you need to do a little selling right now because
That's true.
Really good.
That's true.
They got a lot of choices. So I'm going to go at it from both sides. So as an employer, you want purpose-driven people. You want to weed out people. You want purpose-driven people. And so one of the things you can do as an employer, let's go back to our accounting firm, is to say, we're a different kind of company here. A lot of people are just accounting firms. We help people sleep at night. We help our clients do amazing things. Can you tell me about a time when you made a difference to someone and what that was like for you? And the person you want goes, well, this is kind of different. Oh, yeah, I did blah, blah. Like you want to weed out for that. And you want to be saying, you could interview with a lot of accounting firms. What about us was interesting to you? So you want to be bringing that up in the interview. If you are the employee who's interviewing, the way you do it is with story. So my daughter's about to start a round of interviews and she's got all her skills listed on her LinkedIn, and we're working through that. But one of the things that we're doing is we're getting her a talk track of stories that she can insert into the interview that people will remember. And
Brilliant.
So, for example, I don't want to get into all the details of what she's interviewing for and all that, but because it might change tomorrow. But one of the things when she was all the way through high school, she worked as a hostess at the Ritz-Carlton. And so one of the stories that we have that we want her to insert in the interviews, a true story, is she said, one of the situations that I had was we have a lot of very high profile people come and they are very demanding. And I was the hostess. And that meant I controlled whether they get a table or not. So at the age of 19, I had to be able to tell a very rich, high profile person, I'm going to need you to wait a while. And I needed them to be happy about that. And I worked at my skills. And so there is no problem I can't handle because I have told a CEO, you're going to have to wait a little bit on your table and had them walk away happy. So I can handle things. So like things like that reveal she's selling, but she's not going, well, I'm the best conflict manager ever. She's probably going to say, managing conflict is really hard. And I really had to learn that. Let me tell you about why I had to learn it. You're going to remember that story. And that's a true story. So that's just because, again, it has impact, specificity, and emotion. That's like the magic.
Right. So as Lisa, as we're thinking about the generation, I think it's Gen Z now who are more interested in working for companies that are making a difference.
That's right.
What do you think accounts for that?
I think there are two things that account for that. One, I think we're just evolving. We've evolved past the hard scrabble, food and shelter. And I know a lot of people are still in that, but a lot of the Gen Z is not, and they weren't. And so they are, as humans evolve on the hierarchy of, things, they're beyond food and shelter, they want that purpose. The other thing is they were raised by all these parents like me that from moment of birth said, you're going to change the world, baby girl. You're going to make such a difference. And they believed us. And we weren't wrong. We weren't wrong. They are. And one way they're changing the world is they're saying, I'm just not going to work for 25 years to put money in your pocket in the hopes that one day maybe you choose me and as a partner, or a vice president. They're saying, I want my work to count. And they're not wrong. It's just like when a generation of women came into the workforce and said, people should actually get, time off to be with their families. And they demanded it. And then everyone benefited from it. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Lisa, I'm curious. What did you intrigued me. What did your daughter do to make that CEO happy about waiting?
So a lot of what you do is people have to know that you're working on it, that you care, that it's important to them. So one of the things that she learned was she said, you've got to look people in the eye and say, I understand. You got to understand their situation. This is really important for you to get this table. The second I walk away from you, I'm going to walk over there and we're going to double time to get these tables turned around. And they also have to understand that to be disarming and that person has to feel seen. They have to feel that you care and you have to mean it. And they have to see that you're working. And you also have to do this kind of tricky dance with, there's so many other diners here. And I know yours is really important. I want to make sure everyone has the experience we're about to give you. Like, because the other thing is, like, I know you're the CEO, but guess what? There's 3 of them already at other tables. So you got to get over yourself, bro.
Sounds like a lot of emotional intelligence was needed at the ripe old age of 19.
Yeah.
She got it.
One question I had, so there's always this noise of many other people around you trying to sell things. And there are people who exclusively are trying to sell things, and sometimes you say, oh, there's not much behind there. And then there's that whole mantra, like, fake it until you make it, and all that whole deal where it's about how you position yourself and how you. So how do people, I think one of the things that I've seen is there's a reaction is like, well, you don't want to be seen as one of those people who they're constantly kind of pushing or selling.
Right.
So that sometimes there's a reaction where people say, you want to set yourself differently from people, the whole panoply of people out there trying to sell themselves. How do you recommend approaching that situation where everyone around you is trying to sell something and sell themselves?
So it goes back to those 3 questions. When you say, how do I make a difference and how do I do it differently? That isn't give me your best spin on what you do. That is true, deep introspection around how does my work actually matter? Or if someone were to fund me or buy from me or whatever it is, how could I really help them? And what happens is, so a lot of times what I find is the people that say, oh, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be one of these salespeople. They're like the people that are super out of shape and they go, oh, I don't want to go work out because I don't want to get like all muscular. And you're kind of looking at them going, we're a ways away from that. Like, I'll let you know in about a year if we get there. A lot of times the people who are very reluctant to sell themselves are so far away from seeming like those pushy, it's their fear, but they're very far away from it. And the way that you do it is to talk about it differently. And so instead of saying, like in Ruth's case, what would you say you could help people with? Let's do this live time.
Oh, no pressure.
Exactly.
Improve your success.
Okay. So can you think of someone who you've helped improve their success?
Yes, myself.
Others?
Janice is waving. Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't have applied to Harvard if you didn't pump me.
There you go.
Okay.
I was not expecting that.
So now we have a lifetime thing. Now I want you to hear the difference between
now Debbie's sending me messages. Apparently, her too.
Her too.
Right, this is going to be embarrassing now.
Well, I think Ruth's an inspiration to a lot of people. She doesn't realize the impact that she's had on many of us and many other people. So, but I'll pipe down right now.
Nice.
Ruth always is pushing me, to apply for awards, but she pushed, like, she didn't know I was applying to Harvard, but she kept telling the story over and over of when she went back to school later in life. So after listening to that, it didn't seem that odd when I applied to Harvard to go back to school to get my graduate degree. And so, yes, I don't know why you knew that. I told you because I actually
I'm going to start crying. I knew afterwards, but.
So let's
all right, Lisa, do your thing.
So let's listen to the difference between Ruth coming in and having to bolster herself in the mirror and do an Amy Cuddy power pose, which really works, by the way, and say, I can help you with your success. I mean, that's going to be so uncomfortable for her. And her discomfort with that is going to radiate out, whether she's saying it on a talk show or whether she's saying it to a CEO that she's going to coach. But think about the difference if she says, and I'm going to put some words in your mouth here, I wanted to know what made successful people tick. So I interviewed an astronaut, a business leader. And what I found along the way was I related to them in my own way because I went back to school at a later age and it was transformative for me. And one of the things that I've come to realize is when you share these stories with people, whether it's the astronaut story or my story. I shared that with a client, and she decided to go back to Harvard, but she was over 40 years old, and she went back to Harvard, she applied, and she got in. And it's moments like those that are the centerpiece of my work. And so when I work with people, what I do is I use my research and I use my story to help you figure out what your version of astronaut or Harvard may be. It may be you want to be a better CEO. It may be you want to be a better parent. But whatever your version of that is, I've spent a decade of my life studying this, and my job is to help people with that. Entirely different conversation.
So it's
Everyone was at
storytelling.
the edge of their seats.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
So it's
everyone
storytelling.
of you have that conversation.
oh my God. Bruce, what were you
That-
going to say? I'm kind of speechless right now.
Yeah, so I guess it's storytelling, Lisa, right? So telling what you actually did as opposed to saying that you are
Right.
such and such, but really kind of painting the picture of, all the different things, all the different people that Ruth has helped,
Right.
for instance.
And then as you tell these stories, your own confidence grows because the truth is in it. So you're not having to like bolster up yourself and look yourself in the eye and go, go in there and tell them how great you are. What you're doing is you're talking about a time when your work helps someone else. And the authenticity just rings out.
Yeah, part of this speaks to some of our intergenerational learning work, where we ask people to interact with a parent or a grandparent or look at old photographs to figure out why they care about what they care about.
Yeah.
And that really, really helps you in terms of the resilience and sustains you through the tough times.
There was a study from Dr. Valerie Good at Michigan State University. So, fun fact, she read the original version of Selling with Noble Purpose about 7 years ago. She's a marketing professor. And as she read it, and the research was very anecdotal in that book, based on my experiences with sales teams. I'm a more qualitative researcher, and I use that term very loosely. But she read it and she thought, oh, this is like my father-in-law who sold wheels for tractor trailers. And he outsold manufacturing because he said the wheels that he sold meant the difference on a tractor trailer. When the tractor trailer gets in an accident, which all vehicles do, those wheels meant the difference between life and death on the car they hit. Because those, and so, he's like, I am saving lives selling these wheels. And so she reads Selling with Noble Purpose and she says, oh, that's totally true. Then she says, I want to do more research on this. And so she ended up doing her doctoral thesis on this sense of purpose in sales reps. So I was telling my daughter and business partner, Elizabeth Latardo, I was like, I always felt so guilty that I didn't do this academic research. And little did I know someone else was going to.
Hey, Lisa, it's not too late.
It is. You done it? I'm good.
Lisa, I want you to do Janice. I'm like dying to hear you like phrase her
Okay,
work.
well, let me tell you this one thing and then we'll do Janice. What Dr. Good discovered was not only that this sense of purpose helped people outperform, but they have more resilience.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're not in it. And that's why I was going to go back to what you just said. Then I'm not just in it for me. We humans are at our best when we're in the service of something bigger than ourselves. So if I have clarity about what I'm helping people do, if you reject me, I'm not going to be as crushed. And I might do a better job coming back to you and going, you sure about this? Because I've been thinking about you and I really think I can help you and I really mean it. If you don't want to do it, I'm not going to, be crazy about it. But I really do think I can help you. Like it's building up that muscle.
So true.
So
Bruce, I know you're nodding along because I know, Bruce, I know. I know that we're thinking the same thing.
Well, now you got to share it.
Oh, it's academia. We don't have enough time.
Well, hence why Dr. Valerie Good at Michigan State did this great study, and I'm happy to cite it everywhere. So
Beautiful, because based on your work.
right, like she went deeper, and her academic advisor said, about the book, the first edition of the book, well, this is just qualitative observations. This isn't really vetted academic research. I don't know how you can base something on this. And so I didn't even know her at the time. So she went off and did the academic research. So in the second edition of the book, it's in there. And I'm like, amazing.
It's that's the woman whose name is right here on the cover?
No, that's my co-author, Elizabeth.
Ah, okay. All right. Now do Janice.
Okay, what do we want to do with Janice?
We're like, you're like, do this one.
So what do we do with Janice? Janice, let's go beyond just how to frame up what you do. Because frankly, I think you already did a beautiful job of that. Is there something big, some big funding, some big thing that you want?
Well, I'm trying to change the world for people with hearing loss. So if you want big, that's big.
Okay, great. So let's unpack this a little bit. And again, as people are listening to this, if you have an accounting firm, if you sell widgets, you can do this too. So don't be put off just because Janice's cause is so noble. So you're trying to change the world for people with hearing loss. Why?
So everyone can hear. So everyone has the access they need, and they remove the artificial barriers that prevent people with hearing loss from hearing.
What happened?
Tell your daughter's story.
So when my daughter was born with a hearing loss, which is how I got involved, they told me there were special schools for her. So I decided it was easier to change the world than to lower my standards.
I knew I liked you.
She has tweetable statements.
Yeah, it's easier to change the world than to lower my standards. Yes. And let's just unpack that. That is a woman of steely resolve that says, oh, lower my standards for my child? I don't think so. I think I'm going to change the axis on which the universe rotates, because that would be an easier task. I love this. So the thing that I think that your challenge is, I'm sure that your story of your daughter is compelling. I think your challenge is probably taking it and actually, I said you need specificity and emotion, but actually adding some other stories, because otherwise I've worked with a lot of nonprofits and I've helped people. You want to get beyond the, I feel bad for you, so I'm going to give you money for funding. You want to get to, I have the chance to change the world if I help you. Ooh, that sounds fun. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So what are some examples of things that happen to people when they don't have the things you're trying to do? Like for people that have hearing issues, what happens?
So for example, I recently disrupted the over-the-counter hearing aid market. So the new over-the-counter hearing aid. So by having me work on these issues, I was able to disrupt the oligopoly to ensure that there could be more players enter the market for hearing aids rather than just the big five.
So when it was just the big five, what was the downside of that?
High prices, limited in innovation, and a controlled market.
So I think the story that you might want to tell is, I'm sure your story of your daughter, you have to start with that. I'm going to change the world. Like just repeat that everywhere you go. That's so memorable.
Yeah, I do, because that's usually most people want to know why I entered the field, because it's unusual.
It is unusual, and so you share that. Then where I would take that is I would say, but let's go beyond that. It's easy for people to be empathetic about a mother and a child who, our hearing loss is an issue. But let's go beyond that. Let's think about the middle-aged manager who's in a meeting and they're only catching every other word. Like, that's affecting their performance. That's affecting their team. Have you ever had a family member who had problems hearing? They're left out of the conversation. They don't contribute as much. They don't make the emotional connection that they might otherwise. And so when we think about this, we can well up a lot of empathy for, a young child that has hearing loss but it's so much bigger than that. And then I would go to, and you've already done it. I mean, you literally are changing the world, but to say, the fact that, and so there's 5 problems in this area. That's always important to say there's 3 problems or there's 5 problems. So there's 3 big problems. 1, it's not accessible to people. 5 companies are controlling the whole thing. That means for 50% of the population, purchasing hearing aids costs them more than their monthly rent. And so the very people that need the emotional connection, the very people that need to be successful in their jobs don't get it because it's too expensive. The second thing is public services, the way they're set up. It may never even occur to you as you watch a television show or you go to the movies or you try to listen to your favorite podcast. It may never occur to you that the life-changing, spiritual, emotional, intellectual, entertainment information that you're getting is just completely inaccessible for whatever percent of the population. And then maybe pick another thing. So I mean, it sounds like you're already doing this, but I think what you need to do is you're trying to, what we say in change management is you're trying to turn the heat up on the problem and shine the light on the solution. So turning the heat up on the problem is like you think you don't have a problem because no one has hearing loss. Well, guess what? The manager at the place that you frequent has it. And it's affecting everybody.
That's super helpful. And actually, sorry, Bruce, actually explaining in terms of monthly rent is really super. That's a great way to do that. So thank you. Sorry, Bruce, I didn't mean to speak over you.
That's one of the things you always want to do. Like the 10% increase in mobility is the ability to hold your own fork at the table. Like something everybody can relate to. It's just super visceral and super clear. Bruce, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think many of us view Janice as like a force of nature. She's really doing incredible work. So I think convincing people of the societal benefit is easy because she's doing such great work and has such. How does she convince some of the entrenched interests that may not be interested in societal benefit of the importance of this? That seems like a barrier and obstacle because there are entrenched interests which don't want to move, and no matter how much you say this is great work, fantastic work, they're not going to budge because they are focused on their own small world or their own
or as we learned from our speaker a couple of weeks ago, there's 500 priorities before this one. So how do we move this up the priority food chain?
So are you talking about people that just like, I got a million other things to worry about? Or one of the top 5 companies that goes, oh no, I don't think this is a good idea to open this up at all?
Bruce, you take that.
Yeah, probably both. I mean, I think there's somewhere you like anyone who looks at Janice's work think, wow, this is amazing work. This is an amazing person. But there are people who would say, but I've got like 50 other things I have to worry about right now. And, tyranny of the urgent, people worry about the thing that's right in front of them. Right. And of course, there's also the other group of people who get worried about change. They get nervous about change. So how do you sell to them, or how do you convince them that this is important?
So the thing for the people that have a million other priorities, the way that you increase the urgency is those same things: the impact, the specificity, and the emotion. So you got to say it's this percentage of population. For perspective, that's the state of Vermont. Get every time you need a number, you need to say, for perspective, that's 35 football stadiums packed. That means if you don't know someone, you know someone who knows someone. So you got to increase the urgency of the thing. Then you have to paint the picture of what is happening if we don't solve this problem. So not things are inaccessible for them. Well, again, oh yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, boy, you're doing some good work there. But you've got to say like they can't function at work. They can't do, whatever. Their family members think the person's lost their personality when really they just lost a part of their hearing. You've got to paint that visceral picture. And then you have to also show that by helping me with this, it's going to be fun and easy. You say, how on those ads when they say your donation of only $5 will help you,
the price of a cup of coffee.
Do you see how they do that? Like they're tugging at our heartstrings. And again, you're doing great work. So don't ever feel guilty about upping the, urgency for people. Because the reality is, if they've got somebody bleeding out on the table behind them, nothing you say, they're not going to divert their attention from something that's actually more worthy. They're not. You don't have to worry about that. That's on them. But you always want to be showing them that taking a small step. So you don't ask, be our partner for all our research projects for a year and come to our meetings and it's so exciting and it's so fun. That's what I find academics do. And then you get to be part of our meeting every week, and then we'll go over and you'll get all the data. And people are just
and you get to be on 25 task forces and working groups.
But
the joy.
You make that action step, that first one, so easy. The other thing that I want to go to is when you have resistance. Make your peace that you're not going to get everybody, and go for the quick wins. Whatever you're doing, you go for the quick win. So if you've got these 5 companies that are entrenched, you find one of those founders who got into this business because they had a child with hearing loss. Like you find that soft spot of someone that might be open to you, and you always go for the quick win first. And so if you're presenting to a group, you talk to them in advance, and you're not trying to sell them. You're asking questions like, why might this be good for you all? What might be challenging about it? What kind of resistance do you think I'll get? So you're not trying to sell them at all, but you do that advance work, and you'll kind of get a lay of the land, and you might reach a conclusion, forget it. I'm going somewhere else. Or you might go, I think we could do this one. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and sometimes I think
very helpful.
Sometimes it's semantics. Like when people think of photography, they think of selfies. But if you think about it in terms of education or a skill that you can use if you're going to go to a party to meet a future spouse or for a job interview, those are the same kinds of skills, the research of being observant, learning how to talk to people. So that's another way to think about it. And then in photography, when they learn from the photographers, then they go look at the work. So it's kind of turn things on its ear. It works sometimes.
Well, it's always that direct through line to how does it make a difference? Because what I find with academics and creatives, and I fancy myself both of those things, is we are so excited about what we're doing that we want to share the details. And you got to meet people where they are. That's the least interesting thing to them. The most interesting thing to them is the impact explained in very plain, simple, yet emotionally compelling language. That's the special sauce.
And that's everything that's written here in Selling with Noble Purpose. And you also have another book.
I do.
Similar name.
I have Leading with Noble Purpose, which is on my own. Leading with Noble Purpose is over here and right there. The reason I wrote Leading with Noble Purpose, so I wrote the first edition of Selling with Noble Purpose, and this one reviewer at Forbes said, this is all good, but if you don't have clarity of purpose across the entire organization, it won't work. And I was like, dang on it, I got to go write another book. So I wrote Leading with Noble Purpose.
Bruce, was that you? Did you write that?
Like one reviewer wrote that. And I was like,
it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
He's right. And so I wrote Leading with Noble Purpose. Selling with Noble Purpose is about selling your ideas, selling your concept, selling your product. Leading with Noble Purpose is about creating an entire organization that has clarity of purpose and everyone is dialed into it.
Brilliant. And, Lisa practices what she preaches, because she told me my book is coming out. The Success Factor is coming out in January. And she told me you have to send it to people and tab the parts of the book that would be of interest to them. And a few days later, I get Selling with Noble Purpose in the mail with pages tabbed out for me. So of course, I quickly looked at them and covered the 3 questions that you talked about. plus so many other things. So definitely a great book. I highly recommend that you check it out. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell everyone, where can they find out more about you?
We've got a website. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I do the Work on Purpose newsletter on LinkedIn. I do a LinkedIn Live every Friday. If you Google Lisa Noble Purpose, you'll find me.
Love it. Thank you so much. And to all of our panelists, all their information is in the chat. Go check them out. For our American friends, have a very happy Thanksgiving. And if you're listening to the podcast, which is the audio of our live stream, please leave us a rating and review so we can have other amazing guests like Lisa McLeod. Everyone, thank you so much. And thank you to the Mentor Project once again for hosting us. I'm Dr. Ruth Gotian. See you next time.